Michael Mangarelli with us, former assistant and associate director at the NCAA, working in compliance and other areas, and our resident house football expert. I wish I could call you Dr. Shannon Griffith. That just would sound good.
I got my doctor.
Shannon.
We can always put a DR before it. It may not mean anything.
Can't you get somebody to give you like one of those, when they bring people back, an honorary degree?
Yeah.
What does that, Michael, you're the perfect person to ask. What does that really mean when they give them an honorary degree?
It's a PR move. I mean, it doesn't mean it's a piece of paper.
It's just, yes.
Piece of paper and a PR move. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I don't think you're going to get a pay raise anywhere.
Yeah. No, you have to
hire people.
You have to be a coach that fails to get that.
So it's a badge of honor, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's another thing. College athletics are the only place where you can become a complete failure and richer than your wildest dreams.
Because you don't have to pay the labor force.
Well, there's that. Exactly. Because if they were having to pay the labor force, the coaching contracts are so far out of skew now. Bill Self will be making $13 million this year, I think. Prior to that, the highest paid coach was John Calipari at $8.5 million, and he was at least $2 million higher than the second place guy.
Mm-hmm.
But yet Bill Self has almost doubled. And guess how he did it? Cheating. Cheating.
It pays to cheat, right?
It does. It always has, except for if you were Indiana and your coach was dumb enough to do the same thing that he got in trouble for the year before and was already on sanctions. But and then they turn around and change the rule the next year to make that okay. But that stuff just cracks me up, how something so insignificant was so devastating to a program. It's still mind-boggling because today you look at things that happen like that. Now Louisville has not recovered, but that to me is just kind of like Indiana. Boy, there's been a lot of bad hires along the way. And speaking of which, Michael, why do schools hire and put people in a position that gives these contracts out that have had zero experience in doing that very thing prior to that moment? There are a lot of guys. Most schools hire an athletics director that's been an athletics director. Some places don't do that.
Well, I think ADs, especially at higher profile schools, are scared to hire, relatively unknown but highly successful coaches for maybe lower levels, or maybe they're from the Mountain West or someone, because they can't win the press conference. They're not going to win that initial press conference if they hire somebody with the local fan base isn't tracking on, despite the fact that if you really look at it objectively, what has this coach done from a performance standpoint? How are they trending? How do they build programs? They might check all of those boxes, but these ADs want to win these press conferences, so they'll go.
But I'm talking about the ADs themselves. There are many. There are examples of where a person was hired and put in as an AD that had zero experience as being an AD, zero experience hiring coaches and understanding what coaches should be needed, and handing out these contracts. These contracts, these ADs hand out contracts that are monopoly money. It's bull. It's crazy. It's a slap in the face to be honest with you, to the people all the fans, the regular fans that pay the hard money, the season tickets, all of that. I think it's a slap in the face to them.
Yeah, I think you've got coaches who know the terrain, legal or financially. They've got high-powered agents at this point who know how to play two or more schools off of each other. to get the best deal for their guy. And then, you've got these, like you said, you've got, I don't know if unsophisticated is the right word, but schools tend to hire CEO types. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be good in terms of controlling the purse strings. Maybe they'd be better off hiring CFO types for these 80 jobs, the way the money has gotten crazy.
One would think, but then personally, I don't think that if I'm in that position, you have to go through a hiring group. You have to go through somebody who this is what they do. They know how to sift through, but there's never hitting that home run. It's hard. And the financial ramifications are crazy, because if you're paying a buyout to get rid of your guy and paying a buyout to get your new guy, I was talking to Michael about this earlier. Ohio State, if they wanted Mick Cronin, who formerly coached at Cincinnati and had success there, and I'm not saying that they do,
right,
but I was looking up his contract yesterday. He has handcuffed himself to UCLA because his buyout is stupid bad on his part, on his side. Right now, it's $20 million buyout on a contract that only pays $4 million a year, which I don't get that. And it drops to $15 million. So after March 31st or something, but Ohio State would be on the hook for $30 million just making, or $60 million rather, just making this change at head coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, some of the things that they do is a little bit head scratching. Now, the hard part is knowing the true specifics of a contract and what is or isn't owed, because there's a lot of language in there. I think we saw that a little bit with Tom Allen and his deal, because they ultimately settled for a lesser amount of his buyout to pay cash up front. So there's always things that they can work around. But the day the contracts have gotten out of hand it all started when the TV revenue started piping in, and these coaches figured out that there's all this multi-millions of dollars coming back to conferences and stuff, and they wanted a piece of the pie. And then they started leveraging that, which led to the NIL becoming what it is now today, because all of a sudden you had people out there that had the kids' best interest in saying, look, they're making millions of dollars off of this top player or that top player and jersey sales or whatever. The kids deserve a piece of the pie. And that's what it's led to this Pandora's box now that I'm not sure how you close it. I really don't. I don't know how the NCAA closes the door on all this. Now, I know there's some proposals that are out there that maybe brings the NIL underneath the university as opposed to it being outside of the university. But these contracts, they've gotten out of hand. I've always said the assistant coaches are the ones that need to have the money to be taken care of in some respects, because they're the ones that get left out in the cold when the head coach either gets fired or he moves on to another position somewhere and doesn't take his entire staff. And then that staff's left to wait to see what happens when the new coach gets in, a la Alabama. Nick Saban retires. He's all well and good. He's got millions of dollars in his pocket, but his entire staff, with the exception of one or two, are now looking for a job, and it's too late. It's their money, may run out in March. And so it's gotten so skewed in today's game, whether it's football, basketball, that I don't know how it gets under control. When you go back to talking about, and I think Michael made this comment about hiring an up and coming coach versus hiring a, kind of a rehire from another year or era. Lance Leipold helped that dynamic immensely when Buffalo took a chance on a D3 guy that had won a crazy amount of football games at Wisconsin Whitewater.
A la Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah, right. And those two guys have helped that arena immensely, because now it's freed ADs up to go ahead and make that type of hire and take a chance on somebody like that, and maybe not have to pay that enormous amount of money for a guy that's, been around forever, and, they want X amount of dollars, and ADs think, well, that's the guy that's going to turn us around, so I'm going to give him that money. And then it's a bad hire, and they're on the hook for $10 million for a buyout, $20 million for a buyout, and the ADs all of a sudden being called into the president's office and saying, what are you doing with our money? Because I know some of these athletic departments at the biggest levels are self-funding a lot of this aspect of these contracts. But you're right, it's gotten out of hand. I don't know what closes that door as it pertains to everything that's going on in college athletics today, from coaches' salaries to the NIL to, I just don't know how many teams can survive it that are not at the top of the heap. Washington State and Oregon State's a prime example. They lose the major conference. They lose that, that limelight of being a Pac-12 10 school, and now they get left out in the cold, and it totally changes what they are, who they are, and the perception that they are moving forward. And they're going to lose millions and millions of dollars because of it, even though they may have gotten some money from the Pac-12, but their whole department is now crashing, before them.
Michael?
Yeah, I think the NIL toothpaste is out of the tube at this point. So NIL
absolutely
is
not always an out, baby. There's a foot on top of the tube.
And to expect Congress to come in and kind of fix the problem is almost more
yes. Oh my!
It's beyond
who else
to me.
Who else could do a better job than Congress of fixing this?
So it is out of the tube, and it's not changing. Now, what I do think has the potential to put up some bigger guardrails around how it functions, NIL, is kind of that old business term, return on investment. Mm-hmm. So at some point, when kids take a big old load of money, let's be honest, NIL is a recruiting inducement at this point to get kids to come to your school and then to get kids to stay at your school. But I think after there has been enough time within the current structure, which is brand new, as we know, kids come in, get a big bag to come to the school as a freshman and decide to leave. That's not a good return on investment for whomever those high pocket donors are. So I could see 2-year contracts. You want to come to our school? We really want you to come here. But you got to.
To me, that is something that has to happen. I've been saying that.
Yeah, they got to pay back if they don't stay.
Well, that's
now.
Make it performance-based.
There's nobody that has more leverage than the players. Man, there is no contract. You're free to come in and reap the rewards, and then if you have a good year, you're off to the highest bidder. Now, exactly. It's such a screwed up business. I mean, every bit of it is so screwed up. And I don't know how do you fix it, Michael? How with all the contracts, the players not getting, they're going to get paid. When does that start happening? And how will it happen?
Well, it's going to be, again, it's still part of that slow walk to profit sharing or salary or however you want to frame the compensation. And again, that's separate and distinct from NIL. It's going to happen, but it's going to be slow walked as it has been for the last couple of decades. How it happens, I think ultimately the SEC and the Big Ten and their alliance that they've formed, and again, pretty much specific to football, but they're going to see if they can put parameters around it. But the problem is, you start talking antitrust law, unions. There's so many different legal layers that go into it. And ultimately, the status quo is better for schools now, as it has been for the last couple decades, than to start calling them employees and paying them salaries or giving them profit sharing. And here's the other thing. Lots of schools make lots of money off of football, but not everybody. Indiana University potentially being one of those examples. They don't make crazy money like an Ohio State does. So right there, if it's, how much, they can't offer the same amount of salary or profit sharing that an Ohio State could. So lots of decisions to be made on that end in terms of revenue that is coming from the schools rather than NIL, where the revenue is really coming from collectives and deep-pocketed donors and alumni.